Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our panelists. Former First Lady of the United States, Laura Bush. Chairman and Chief Executive Officer, Alibaba Group, Jack Ma. Teacher and contributing correspondent, NBC Today Show, Jenna Hager. Founder, Global Health Corps, Barbara Bush. Founder and Chairman, NITT, Rajendra Pawar. And our moderator, international journalist, Al Jazeera English, Riz Khan.
Hello, everyone. President Clinton and your team, thank you very much. I'm very honored to be sitting here. Usually, when we say Al Jazeera, the room clears. We've locked the doors, so you can't run away. But those of you who've seen the channel know it's safe. I'm very honored to be here and to have such a distinguished panel to talk with, and you'll have a chance to talk with them too. I'm also glad this is not a conference, because I was told recently that a conference is the confusion of one person multiplied by the number present. So it's actually very encouraging that President Clinton has the wisdom to call this an initiative. Now, today we're going to look at the idea of harnessing human potential, and as I say, I want this very much to be a case of listening to some stories of where that has worked, where those stories and the concepts that they delivered could be applied to other areas, and of course a chance to get your questions in too. It's important to read the signs. I was told a story of, in Virginia, very close to Washington, D.C., where I live, a state trooper, a highway policeman, happened to go onto Route 10 and saw this car crawling along really slowly. And he was shocked. He said, "This is dangerous. This is more dangerous than the cars that are speeding." So he followed it for a few moments, pulled it over and found it was filled with elderly ladies. So he went up to the elderly lady driving and he said, "What are you doing?" And she said, I'm not speeding. Honestly, I'm not speeding." He said, "No, I know you're not speeding." Quite the opposite, actually. She said, "I was just doing the speed on the sign." He said, "What sign?" She said, "I saw the sign on the road. It says 10. He said, No. That's Route 10. It's not the speed limit. It's Route 10. And he said, "Look, but one thing I noticed is your passengers, the other ladies in the back, they look terrified. They look in really bad shape. Are they okay?" She said, "Oh, they'll be fine. We just got off Route 120. So the important thing is it's essential to read the signs correctly. And I hope that with some of the stories that we'll hear today, we get to read the signs correctly. I'm not going to go into lengthy bios because, of course, the agenda has the details of everyone on board, and, of course, you probably know them very well. So we'll get on to the questions quickly. But I want to thank, first, Jenna Hager and Barbara Bush for stepping in. Shakira was called away last minute. I know many were expecting her to be here, but we replaced one smart, beautiful woman with two smart, beautiful women. So thank you very much. Thank you. We have a wonderful, as I say, a wonderful panel here because Mrs. Laura Bush can, of course, give us a great idea of her work that has taken her overseas and some of the work that she's done in empowering women. We want to look at the power of women in harnessing human potential. Jenna and Barbara also have a lot of experience in this area, and we can even see how that has changed across, the generational gap. Jack Ma, of course, of Alibaba, a lot of experience in trying to drive entrepreneurship, which is the way forward in many countries where there may not be more conventional ways of sort of government-focused opportunities. And Rajendra Pawar can tell us also about some of the stories from Bhutan, where he's been launching a project that actually has made a huge difference to a small country that is trying to exploit its potential. So, Mrs. Bush, if I could start with you, ma'am.
Okay,
Let's get an idea of where you've seen human potential drawn up and the results it's produced. And I know in your case, seeing the potential that women can bring is a crucial one. What have you seen that has actually worked?
Well, one of the things I've seen in Afghanistan since the fall of the Taliban is really the rise of women there, the chance that women have for the first time in decades to be a real part of civic life there. And one of the really exciting women that I've had a chance to meet was a woman who had run some of the secret schools during the time of the Taliban. She didn't leave Afghanistan. She had run secret schools in her basement. Sakina Yaqubi is her name. And after the Taliban, after they left, she was funded by a number of American women who are part of the United States U.S. Afghan Women's Council. And now she's opened about 40 women's centers around Afghanistan that provide literacy for adults as well as school for girls, a way for girls and women to be educated. And she was recently in Dallas at the U.S.-Afghan Women's Council that I hosted in March at SMU, and she said something I thought was very interesting. She said, "Don't feel sorry for us." She said, "Be with us." And I think that's what all of us need to do for women all over the world. Certainly one of the real challenges for developing human potential is gender inequity. And when we know that 2/3 of the illiterates in the world are women, and that women are much more likely to be marginalized, and if we look at the countries where women are really left out, we see usually failed economies and failed countries. Because if women's rights aren't protected, usually men's rights aren't either. So I think she's one great example of someone who was supported by U.S. women after that, but also just with her own ingenuity started these women's centers.
Thank you, ma'am. And of course, thank you also for allowing Jenna and Barbara to have a say here. We can see if there's a generational change in approach to harnessing potential too here, in the sense that, Jenna, I know you've traveled around. You went around Latin America a lot. You know the power of the media now with the work you're doing, and you work in Baltimore. You've worked with a number of groups. Tell me how you see education changing lives. What have you seen?
Well, as a teacher, I may be slightly biased. I'm a current teacher in West Baltimore, and I am working in Latin America with UNICEF. I noticed that education is the key to breaking cycles of poverty and disease. And when people have access to education and the opportunity to succeed, then those two cycles get broken. For example, I worked with a 17-year-old single mother her own mother didn't know she was HIV positive. She didn't have access to education, so she couldn't read. And so she didn't know how to keep her daughters healthy when she was pregnant. But Anna, the girl that I worked with, got an education, learned how to read, and took the ARVs that she needed to so that her daughter, I'm very happy to say, is HIV negative. So all of these, health, education, and poverty, are all cycles that are intertwined together. And even in inner city Baltimore, where I work, many kids want the opportunity to succeed. And I work at a public boarding school where 100% of the kids in Washington, D.C. go on to college. And of course, everybody wants their kids to have that opportunity. So a college education and learning to read are things that can help not only change their life, but change the lives of their kids as well.
I think that's one of the key things you mentioned, that it's the aspirations of parents, whether it's in an impoverished place, whether it's in a very developed place. And I think maybe the people in this room could link in that way, emotionally, with parents in other countries. They want to see the best for their children. I guess that's what you saw as well out of it.
It's very true. And in fact, I was just in Ethiopia with CARE, and one of the programs we saw was a group, this huge group of young girls. And when we asked them, when we listened to them about what their lives were like, we heard that almost all had escaped early marriage. And when we asked who helped them escape early marriage, it was their mothers. And they didn't want their daughters to face the same situation, because early marriage leads to maternal health issues, of course, and to babies dying, and to these girls having these lives that are not fair for them. But one of the problems is, and one of the sad things that I think maybe I can pass on, is that, as a question, is that these girls escaped early marriage and came from rural areas of Ethiopia to the capital, where they only became migrant workers and basically slaves, where they worked for 15 hours a day for pennies and quarters. And they said, help us. They were in a school, and you hoped that this school could get them access to another school and continue on. But education is very important, but so is economical opportunities.
Interesting also how that exploitation destroys the right for potential as well. Now, in the interest of staying with ladies first, Barbara, Jenna had mentioned that the importance of education, touched on healthcare. You, with the Global Health Corps, have a better understanding of the education side too, and you worked in South Africa on health issues. What did you see there?
Well, when I graduated from college, I moved to South Africa and I worked at a children's hospital. And one thing that I ended up spending a lot of my time doing was literally spending time with babies because their mothers could not stay with them at the hospital in order to continue making money. So mothers would have lost their job if they wanted to support their children at the hospital. And I also saw the tremendous need of innovation and energy and ideas of anyone committed to health to make change in that space. So I, a few years later, came back to the United States, and I met a few partners at a conference, the 2031 UNAIDS conference, which is why I do love conferences. And our mission was to build up the next generation of leaders in health. Health is a barrier to human potential, and if we want to make changes, then we need more bright young people with diverse skill sets entering this space and seeing that healthcare can be a career option. So for instance, one of our fellows from last year, his name is Amit Salvi, he used to work for the Gap in supply chain management. So his job was to distribute jeans from a warehouse to Gap stores all around the United States. Well, he joined Global Health Corps, and he ended up working for the government of Tanzania. And his job then was to distribute drugs from a warehouse all around the entire country of Zanzibar to rural places. And that's just one example of what one person that can devote their life to this space, you know, the changes that they can make by literally affecting millions of people getting drugs. And that's just one example that I want to show of how young people, regardless of what their backgrounds are and their skill sets are, can literally make a difference in this space. So, you know, they need to know that they're welcome in the healthcare world. And if we want to make change, then we need them to devote their careers to this space.
Wonderful. Thank you.